Welcome, everyone. So now that we have an understanding of the IoT ecosystem and more importantly, the attack surfaces that we have, we can get started with hacking. Similar to other types of penetration testing, like network penetration testing or web pen testing, or, honestly, really any type of pen testing, we're going to kick off with doing our recon. Now, when we were learning about electrical engineering in the fundamentals lessons that we were doing, we actually did some phases of recon since we're repurposing the router as both a test subject for that learning and also our target. The visual inspection of the PCB, the probing with the multimeter, and then finally the discovery of the UART port with the logic analyzers would all be very important parts of recon that we've already done. Now, before we actually get our hands on our target, or if we're actually just looking for a target without purchasing something, there's actually quite a bit of things that we can look for online or as OSINT. And that's what we're going to take a look at in this lesson. So I'm just going to hop over to my computer and we'll get started on that. So one of the very first places that I like to look when I'm doing hardware OSINT is to take a look at the FCC filings. Now, if you're not familiar with the FCC, stands for Federal Communications Commission, and this is a US agency that regulates communications in the US. And one of the big things that they regulate is wireless communications. And that includes, basically anything that can communicate wirelessly or broadcasts any kind of wireless signal. We're not just talking about Wi-Fi. This would also be, any radio signals, things like Bluetooth, RFID, NFC. Basically, if it broadcasts anything out into the air, then it's going to be regulated by the FCC. So if these electronic devices want to be sold or manufactured or even used in the US, then they need to comply with these FCC regulations. And in order to actually comply with that, they have to submit some details and reports to the FCC. And then the FCC will approve that product. And any product that they approve is going to get an FCC ID. So if you flip over your router on the back, you'll see this label with some details about it. And then if we zoom in and take a look here, you can see that we have this FCC ID here. And the first 3 or 5 digits are for the manufacturer. So on here we have this 2AXJ4, and that is for TP-Link as the manufacturer. And then we've just got the part number here that makes up the FCC ID. And we can take this ID and we can go look it up and find the filing for this. Or if we don't actually know the ID specifically, we can usually just search with the part number and find it. So we're going to hop over to the browser right now and take a look at what we can find. Okay, so I'm over at the FCC website here, and you can see that it looks like it has not been updated since the days of dial-up. However, there is a lot of good information that can be found here for all the different hardware or equipment that we may be interested in hacking. Just to make a little bit of sense of this URL, I usually just bookmark it if I want to go here because it's kind of hard to remember, and I will link it below. But this OET, that is the Office of Engineering Technology, and what we're looking up is the equipment authorization. So these are the documents and images and everything that the companies will need to submit in order to get their authorization, and we're doing a search on that. So we can go in here, and the grantee code, this is that company code, so it's the first 5 characters in our case of the FCC ID, and then we can put this product code in, and we can do a search here. So you can definitely do a search on the FCC website, but I find that it's actually a little bit easier. There's some websites and tools that scrape the data from here, and they're actually a little bit easier to use. So I'm going to show one of those, and that's the one that I usually use. So it's called FCCID.io is the one that I like to use. And then we can just do an FCC ID search. So what I'm going to do is I've got that FCC ID copied here that we pulled off of the router. And now, if you don't know this or you're looking up and you don't have the router, generally you can just find it through the part number, but we've got the whole ID. So I'm just going to pop that in here. We're going to run a search. Perfect. And we've brought back one result here, which is perfect. It's for this TP-Link Corporation Limited wireless and router with this part number, which is the one that we were looking at. And if we scroll down here, we can see the exhibits, and this is what we are specifically looking for. Now with this router, you can see we just have the label location and the external photo, which really aren't that useful for us. But if we do a little bit more digging here, we get this FCC change ID document. So I'm just going to open that up. And it will actually preview the PDF on here, which is nice, so we don't have to download it to look at it. And if we read through this PDF, it says that they are looking to change the FCC identifier for currently approved devices from this. So they're just changing the ID from previously submitted one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this. And then I'm going to go back and run another search. So if we just paste this in here with a little bit of digging. All right, perfect. Still the same thing. We got this TP-Link Technologies, 300 megabit per second. This is us, perfect. So if we scroll down here, now we've got a bunch more documents we can start to take a look at. We've got the manual. If we didn't have the manual, this is pretty easy to find, but we've got the manual here. Let's take a look at the external photo, make sure we're working with the proper device. Perfect, just looking at the external photo, this looks like the one that we have. And then this is where it starts to get pretty interesting here. So we've got this internal photo, so let's take a look at that. All right, so let's scroll down. Pretty poor resolution photos here, but if we keep scrolling down, pretty detailed picture here of the board, and you can actually see, interestingly enough, that it's already sticking out to me. We could identify that there's most likely a UART connection here, and you can see that they actually already have the headers here. So we're either looking at an older version of the board that had this header on it, or what's most likely happened is this is just a test board and they left this on for the testing. If you scroll down even further, this is great details here. We've got one of the chips here, and we've got the manufacturer and then the part number. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going to copy all of this. So this for sure 100% is good details, and we'll go look at this further. And if we scroll down again, we've got another really high resolution picture here of this chip. And again, going to take this manufacturer and this whole part number and save it for later for more investigation. Another one here. Perfect. Now, so you may be wondering, like, we already had the router open, of course, and we could find this information ourselves. But one of the nice things about the FCC filings is, I mean, if you're doing a penetration test and you don't have your hands on the router or your target yet, then you could start here and actually get some work done before you get that. Or if you're a security researcher, or, you know, this is also what the black hat hackers are doing, and you're looking for a target, well, this is one place to start. If you don't want to actually go buy or get your hands on a device, you're just looking for something, you know, that maybe has exposed UART, or you want to find more about it, well, we can do that for free from the FCC filings. If we just go back to the rest of the filings here too, there is one other thing that I want to show you, and that is these three filings right here that are listed as confidential. And you see, unfortunately, we can't download those, but we have a circuit diagram, a block diagram, and the operation description. So if we could get our hands on these, that would be great. But unfortunately, they've made these confidential. So if we just look quickly at this confidential letter, it basically just says that these materials are trade secrets and proprietary information, and they're asking not to disclose these to the public as they might be harmful. And it looks like the FCC has granted that request. Unfortunately, most of the time these will be made confidential, but there have been times where I've come across filings that these aren't confidential, so always worth it to take a look and also see if you can find these. Even still, finding the pictures of the chips and their manufacturers and part numbers will actually give us quite a bit of information to go off into digging further without actually having our hands on the device. That wraps up this lesson. I'll see you over in the next one, where we take a look at the data sheets for these components that we just identified through the FCC website. I'll see you over there.